The electricity bill is $12 a month, and food costs $1.70 a day. You have to strictly adhere to this. And don't you spend money on makeup and clothes. If you can't do that, we're getting a divorce. I was speechless at my husband's unbelievable demands. It was obviously impossible. I could feel anger seeping into me. As you said yesterday, I'll start saving rigorously from today. I'll be careful not to waste money. My name is Mirabelle, a 34-year-old housewife. I graduated from high school and then went on to a vocational school, after which I got a job at a private company. However, the company suddenly went bankrupt, and I found myself unemployed after just 3 years. I started looking for a job while receiving unemployment benefits for about a year, but honestly, I couldn't find a company that felt right. During this time, I heard about the increasing number of people working from home as freelancers and decided to work as a web designer from home. After working as an employee for 3 years, I realized that being an office worker wasn't for me. I've always struggled with waking up early, and I hated going to the office buildings in the city on packed trains like everyone else. And frankly, I wasn't good at acting as part of a group and taking collective action. So, the idea of working alone at home seemed perfect. At first, I took any job I could, no matter how simple or low-paying, to build up my experience. Initially, my salary was just pocket money, but since I had no desire for material things, I managed to save quite a bit over 3 years, so I wasn't worried about living expenses. About a year and a half later, I was finally earning a salary comparable to that of a newly graduated full-time employee. It's amazing to be able to earn money without being disturbed or rushed by anyone. Thinking this, I continued to take on more work and kept busy. Before I knew it, time had flown by, and I had turned 31. I met my husband, Ken, around that time. It was at the wedding of a dear friend. Seeing my best friend looking so happy made me feel happy too. After the wedding, I attended the reception, where I happened to sit next to Ken. Despite the glamorous setting of a wedding, my first impression was of someone who seemed cold and without a smile. But shortly after the reception started, he suddenly gave me a band-aid, saying, "Here, take this." "Why?" "Because your foot looks painful," he answered gruffly, his gaze fixed on my foot. Actually, I had a blister from wearing heels I wasn't used to for too long. Ken had noticed it. Thank you." "It's no big deal." "But why wear heels if they hurt your feet?" "What do you mean?" "I don't really like heels either." "But they match the dress better, right?" "I see. Well, women have it tough, huh?" Ken said this and laughed with a crinkled smile. I was drawn to him, a little mean-looking but kindly and cutely smiling. As the reception was winding down, and when we were about to leave, he asked for my contact information. He seemed more embarrassed than unfriendly then. I didn't want to regret it if we never met again. Hearing him ask this way, a bit fidgety, made my heart flutter. From that day, we started communicating frequently, going on dates, and eventually, we became a couple. Ken had always lived with his parents, so it became a routine for us to go back to my place, where I lived alone. And before I knew it, Ken had moved in with me, and we had started living together without really deciding to. On our second anniversary, he suddenly gave me a ring. "It's been 2 years, so I thought I had to take responsibility. Mirabelle, will you marry me?" I was overjoyed when he said this. I immediately said yes, and we decided to get married. When we got married, I quit my job. My husband was what you'd call a traditional breadwinner. "Mirabelle, you take care of the home," he had said when we got married. I had my doubts about becoming a full-time housewife since my job was finally on track, but both my mother and my husband's mother were housewives. It wasn't as if I didn't have the value of a wife being a homemaker. Besides, I don't hate cooking or doing laundry, and above all, I think I'll be glad to be a stay-at-home mom when we have kids. I figured it wouldn't be a problem to start working again once the kids are older. We had a peaceful marriage without any fights, but there was something about my husband that bothered me a bit. He was extremely frugal, to an odd extent. For example, we couldn't use vending machines or convenience stores at all. He would say it's just a waste of money and basically banned buying from such places. Sure, buying from the supermarket can save you a few cents here and there, and I could understand that. But there are more stories about my husband's frugality. All our furniture can be second-hand, or heck, we can even pick up stuff that's been thrown out. Buying new is just a waste of money, he'd say, and so we furnished our new home mostly with used items. Because of his personality, I couldn't spend any money on my appearance or beauty. For instance, after going to get my hair cut for the first time in a year, he muttered, "You got your hair cut? Women are so expensive. And it all comes out of my earnings, too." I had held back and only went after a year, and the first thing he says is to criticize the expense. Even I felt disgusted at this comment. I don't have a penny I can spend freely. Looking at SNS, seeing friends happily traveling or dressing up, I couldn't help but feel envious. And amidst all this, we hit an even bigger obstacle. There was no sign of us having kids. 2 years had passed since we got married, but nothing happened. Why can't we have kids? My husband grew angry and more frustrated day by day. He seemed quite anxious about not being able to have children. On the other hand, I wasn't as anxious as he was. It's a gift, and I thought as long as I could enjoy a happy life with my husband, whether or not we could have kids didn't matter. Just because we got married, it doesn't mean we absolutely have to have children. That's what I thought, but as my husband's irritation grew day by day, so did his harshness towards me. "Are you infertile or something?" My husband looked at me with suspicion, frowning. "I don't know unless we get tested, but why are you suddenly saying such a thing? Infertility is mostly the woman's fault, right?" No, nowadays it's pretty much 50-50 between men and women. So, it's not necessarily just my fault, I think." "What are you talking about? That's just a convenient claim by women." "Then, how about we go to the hospital? Let's both get tested and see." I'm already over 30 and I don't want to argue about who's at fault. If we find out the cause, we can get treatment and maybe clear up some of this fog, I thought. However, my husband refused. "It's probably your issue anyway, so you go alone. Plus, if both of us go, it'll cost double for the tests. That's just too wasteful." So, with my husband angry, I had no choice but to go to the hospital alone for the tests. But, there was nothing abnormal with the results. A few days later, I reported the test results to my husband. "I got tested, and there's nothing wrong. The doctor said to bring my husband next time. So, how about you get tested too, Ken?" There were quite a few men at the hospital. I meant it, thinking of my husband who wanted kids. However, he didn't take kindly to this suggestion at all. "Huh? Are you trying to say it's my fault?" "No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's a possibility, so let's check." "So, there's no way it's my fault. It's probably because you're getting older, isn't it?" "Excuse me? Isn't it true that a woman's fertility drops significantly after she turns 30? In the end, it's your fault." Seeing my husband glare at me like that sent shivers down my spine. How could we not communicate at all? And from that time, my husband's attitude towards me got worse. There was one day. I usually start preparing dinner around 4 p.m. so that it's ready as soon as my husband gets home. But that day, I was running around, having been to the dentist and out in town for errands. Because of that, I couldn't start preparing dinner until around 6 p.m. I was rushing to get ready, but my husband came home in the middle of preparations. "Hey, it's already this late and dinner's not ready?" "Sorry. I was a bit busy today." When I said that, my husband got furious, his face turning red. "You're always lazing around. You're always lounging at home, at least do the chores properly." "I'm not lounging around at all." "Humph. Anyway, don't inconvenience me. If there's no dinner, I'm going out to drink." Saying that, my husband left and didn't come back until morning. From that day, I tightened up my feelings even more. I made sure dinner was ready by the time my husband returned. I diligently did all the housework, cleaning, and laundry. But it seemed like no matter how hard I tried, it didn't matter to my husband. He never returned to the kind husband he used to be. Moreover, recently he's hardly ever home, always saying he has overtime or business dinners. With my husband hardly ever at home, eventually, we even started sleeping in separate bedrooms. Our intimate life decreased, not to mention completely vanished, and having kids was out of the question. He rarely comes home, but tells me not to indulge in luxury with the money he earns, not even allowing me to have lunch with friends. When I pull out clothes that have been sleeping in the back of the closet for a while, he explodes, "Hey, when did you buy those clothes?" He seemed convinced when I explained they weren't new, just old clothes I had worn before, but he raised his voice, "Don't you dare buy makeup or clothes on a whim and indulge in luxury." Being treated this harshly certainly built up stress. With my husband coming home late, and me wanting to work during the day to spend that money freely, he wouldn't allow it. "Just focus on your chores quietly." Saying that, my husband went back to his room. Tears overflowed from my eyes as I watched his back. Can this really be called a marriage? I wonder if I'm not just a housekeeper under the guise of a stay-at-home wife. No, a maid who actually gets paid would be better off. The word divorce crosses my mind again and again. If he's still concerned about not having children, we need to talk about it. Hey, why don't we give up on having kids and go back to being the close couple we used to be? When I said that, my husband got angry again. What do you mean, giving up on your own? Are you trying to say I'm defective? Nobody's saying that. No matter how I tried to argue, I was just shouted down. After that, I stopped saying anything to my husband. Every day was just going through the motions of household chores. About half a year into these days, my husband unusually started a conversation. "Hey, how much is our electric bill?" He always says to save and not to indulge, yet he leaves the entire household finances to me. He has no idea how much the utilities and groceries cost. But, since he had never asked something like this before, I was a bit surprised and confused. "Why are you asking all of a sudden? Just tell me." The electric bill is about $170, I guess." "What? $170 is way too much." I had no idea why he was so shocked. "I think that's normal, though." Indeed, we use the heater in the winter, and since we have an induction cooker, cooking dishes that take a long time can add up on the electric bill. But I thought it was average overall. However, according to my husband, I'm apparently wasting electricity while he's at work. "Hey, aren't you wasting money on electricity while I'm at work?" No, that's not true. I make sure it's warm during the day and bundle up when it's cold to avoid using the heater. And I hardly watch TV. You're the one who stays up late playing video games with both the air conditioning and the lights on. My husband, pointed out like this, asked irritably, "Then how much do we spend on groceries?" "About $510, I guess." "What? Why are you spending so much? That's way too extravagant." "Extravagant? Are you serious? $510 for groceries for a couple is doing quite well. Especially now, with prices skyrocketing, food is really expensive." I didn't think my husband was so out of touch with reality. "You're splurging too much on electricity and groceries. If you're a stay-at-home wife, you should manage better. Don't tell me you're secretly spending that much on your clothes and makeup." "There's no way. I want to dress up and have new clothes and makeup too. But I've been holding back because you're against it." I've only been buying the bare minimum and have been trying to save on groceries and electricity. Yet, why do I have to be spoken to like this? I bit my lip in frustration. Then my husband said something outrageous. "Listen, I didn't let you be a stay-at-home wife so you could indulge in luxury. The electric bill should be $12 a month, and groceries should be $1.70 a day. You need to strictly adhere to this. And don't you spend money on makeup and clothes. If you can't do that, we're getting a divorce." I was speechless at my husband's unbelievable demands. It was obviously impossible. My husband, who lived with his parents until we got married, probably doesn't know how much things cost. I'm at a loss for words on how to explain this to my husband with his skewed sense of money. But my husband didn't give me time to think. Hey, your response? This is why I hate incompetent stay-at-home wives. My husband looked down on me as he said that. Well, you don't have the money or a job to leave anyway. Without me, you'd be living on the streets. Anger was seeping into me. The kind Ken I knew was gone. Looking at my husband laughing derisively and looking down on me, I felt utterly disappointed. The next day, as I sent my husband off as usual, I said this. As you said yesterday, I'll start saving diligently from today. I'll be careful not to waste money. If you understand that, then it's fine. I'll forgive you if you change. I'll let you stay in this house. With a triumphant smile, my husband cheerfully went to work. I immediately called my in-laws. Since my parents live far away, I can't see them often. Instead, my in-laws, who live about a 20-minute drive from my house, have always been kind to me. My in-laws are my lifeline. When I explained the situation to my mother-in-law, she was shocked and apologized to me. You're doing a great job, I think. It's the responsibility of me and your father for spoiling Kent too much. I'm really sorry. I made a certain proposal to my mother-in-law, who apologized, and she gladly accepted it, eager to help. That day, my husband came home at the usual time. Normally, when my husband texts me he's coming home, I warm up dinner and unlock the door. But today, there was no warming up dinner or unlocking the door. Thinking the door would be unlocked, my husband jiggled the front door once, realized it wasn't open, and then unlocked it himself to enter the house. Hey, Mirabelle. Why didn't you unlock the door? He entered angrily. Stomping down the hallway, and the moment he opened the living room door, he exclaimed. What? What are you doing? On the table, a candle was placed, and I was sitting at the dining table. I looked at my husband with cold eyes and said, "Welcome home." What are you doing? Why aren't the lights on? You said the electric bill should be $12, right? To achieve that, we have to refrain from using electricity. Our house is all electric, and there's a basic fee, so using electricity would just exceed that. So, I canceled it. What? Canceled? What are you talking about? While frantically pressing the light switch and getting irritated, my husband didn't realize. Of course, I hadn't really canceled anything, I had just turned off the breaker. But my husband, who had never worried about such things, wouldn't know. So, I canceled it, which means flipping the switch won't do anything. You seriously canceled it? Why would you do something like that on your own? With a flashlight and candles, we'll be fine. This way, we'll stay within $12. When I said that, my husband sighed heavily. Crap, what the hell? Fine. Just serve dinner already. So, I served the dinner I had prepared for today. What? What is this? What do you mean? It's just an egg and salt. Oh, and this, water. Don't mess with me. Is this some kind of joke meal? Well, you said the grocery budget is $1.70 a day. If you consider the condiments, it barely comes under $1.70, doesn't it? I smiled broadly. My husband was dumbfounded. Are you out of your mind? Forget it, I don't want it today. I'm going to take a bath. Holding a flashlight, my husband stomped off to the bathroom. I couldn't hold back my laughter as I watched him leave. And the moment my husband turned on the shower, his scream echoed from the bathroom. What the hell? Why is it so cold? I said we're all electric, right? So, no hot water. Oh, you didn't know that? I approached the bathroom and said that. Damn. I could hear my husband's frustrated voice. I quickly gathered up the flashlight and all his clothes he had left in the living room and went back. Then, from the bathroom, it's cold, I'm going to catch a cold. Hey, Mirabelle. Mirabelle, his voice called out in the darkness. Since I always prepare pajamas and towels for him, my husband couldn't even manage post-bath preparations himself. Dripping wet, he came into the living room. "Hey, why don't you come no matter how many times I call?" Without a towel or clothes, and after being drenched in cold water in the dead of winter, he couldn't dry himself off. My husband sneezed loudly, as if he was quite cold. He was shivering badly and seemed to have trouble speaking. "Oh right. The towels, clothes, and the pajamas you always wore were all worn out, so I threw them away. I wanted to buy you new pajamas, but you said the budget for clothes was $0 yesterday, right? So, I couldn't buy them, and I thought buying towels would be considered wasteful. Ah, but I do have this." What I offered to my shivering husband was a rag. "What is this, a rag? Are you kidding me?" "I bought the rag for cleaning at the end of the year. So, that's all I had." "Don't mess with me. There's a limit to how much you can disrespect your husband." My husband raised his voice. Then, from the darkness, a man's voice, lower than my husband's, was heard. "Who's messing around now?" With those words from my father-in-law, my mother-in-law flicked on the breaker, turning on the lights. Blinking in the suddenly bright light, my husband looked toward where the voice came from. "What? Dad, Mom. Why are the lights on?" In front of my soaking wet, naked husband stood my mother-in-law and father-in-law, arms crossed. My husband just stood there, frozen in shock. "How did you end up being such a disappointing son? Really? What you have to show for yourself is disappointing too." My husband sheepishly covered his groin. My mother-in-law threw him his pants, which he hurriedly put on. "Do you have any idea how disrespectful you've been to Mirabelle? It's truly embarrassing as your parents to know you're so unaware of common sense." My husband, scolded severely by his own parents, shrank like a scolded puppy and began to sit. "We heard you were spouting nonsense, so we thought we'd come and talk directly. Right?" As my father-in-law said that, my mother, who had been waiting in the bedroom, peeked out. "It's been a while, Ken," she said with a bright smile, which made my husband's face turn pale. "An electric bill of $12 and groceries of $1.70 a day? You'd exceed that in about an hour. To demand that from two adults' living expenses, anyone would realize it's unreasonable if they thought about it. Or do you have the skills to save that much?" My mother-in-law and father-in-law stepped closer to my husband, looking down on him like demons. My husband began to sweat profusely. "I'm really, truly sorry." He apologized again and again. Then, my husband's phone rang. At that moment, my husband looked like he knew he was in trouble. Not missing a beat, my father-in-law grabbed the phone from the table and put it on speaker. "Hello? You said earlier your wife went crazy and you'd be coming to my place, but you haven't shown up? I'm getting tired of waiting." A sweet female voice came through the phone. "Hey, Kent. What's this about?" We all looked at my husband at once. No, this isn't what it looks like." My husband looked around, clearly flustered. I borrowed the smartphone from my father-in-law and answered instead. "Kent is naked with me right now." "What? Who are you? Which woman are you?" "I'm Kent's wife." Wife? Why?" "I'll be asking for alimony later. We're busy right now, so I'm hanging up." The voice of my husband's mistress, too shocked to speak, came through. I ignored it and hung up. "So, you forced me to save while you were having an affair?" "No, it's not like that." Just as my husband tried to make excuses, my father-in-law gave him a smack. "Ouch! You're really the lowest kind of man. It hurts. Dad, please stop." My father-in-law continued to smack him. My husband started trembling, his face turning pale. And then he admitted to the affair and apologized to me repeatedly. "I'll never forgive you. I'll get the alimony and we're getting a divorce." After being smacked multiple times by my father-in-law, my husband was completely disheartened. He quietly agreed to the divorce, and afterward, we signed the divorce papers. I demanded alimony from my husband and his mistress. I managed to get $51,000 from each of them, enough money to live on my own. I'm grateful to my in-laws for their support in the divorce. Afterward, I resumed my freelance work and have been able to lead a stable life. For now, I think I'll focus on work, save money, and gradually enrich my personal life, putting romance on hold for a while. Let's break off our engagement. I'm marrying her instead. What? That's the way it is, sorry about that. The one laughing triumphantly next to him is my half-sister. Several months have passed since that shocking event. Just as the wound from the broken engagement began to fade and I started to move forward, I saw my sister again on my way home from work. Huh? Why are you here? I tried to hurry past without her noticing, but she said, "Found you. I've been looking for you." She seemed angry, but I had no idea why I should be the one being scolded. If anything, I should be the one who's mad. What do you want? I've got nothing to say to you. What the hell is going on? You've been lying to me, haven't you? Huh? What on earth are you talking about? I'm a saleswoman and I just turned 30. A year ago, I started dating a man named Michael and he proposed to me a month ago. We were engaged, but that was called off today. As someone who wants to get married and have kids like me, having the engagement broken off just before turned 30 is nothing short of a disaster. After breaking up with Michael, I headed straight to my family home where my mother was waiting. Of course, the fact that my engagement was off, and the reason why, was too cruel to bear alone, so I called my mom immediately. She quickly said, "I'm at home right now, so come over." "Where are you? Should I come and get you?" Even though I was dumped by my fiancé, there were people who cared for me. Just feeling that lightened my heart a little. I told her I could get home myself and, with my mind blank, I got on the train and headed for my family home. When I arrived, my mother was waiting for me at the front door and said, "Welcome home." I'm home. As I said that, the tears I had been holding back came pouring out like a waterfall. Without asking what had happened, my mother silently waited for my tears to calm down. Then, when my tears had subsided a bit, I started to tell my mother about what had happened that day. I was supposed to meet Michael today, but when I got to the meeting place, Becky was there too. What? It's not surprising that my mother was shocked. Becky is my half-sister. Although she's my half-sister, we can't exactly say we get along well. We've had a complicated relationship since forever. I had never introduced Michael to her, so I had no idea why Becky and Michael were together. But the unexpected pair had more shocking news. "Harper, there's something I have to tell you today. I want to break off our engagement." What? Of course, I couldn't accept it right away. Things had been going well with Michael recently. We had even taken a short trip last week and discussed our wedding rings. There had been no signs that he was going to break up with me. Why? Can you tell me why? I had a bad feeling when I saw Becky next to him. That's because Becky has always tried to steal my boyfriends and friends in the past. But after growing up, none of this happened, and I honestly thought it wouldn't happen anymore. I wanted to believe so. But Michael's reply was, "I've fallen in love with someone. I intend to marry her." That's what he said. And when I saw him looking at Becky so adoringly, I felt dizzy. Becky looked at me triumphantly and said, "That's the way it is." Sorry about that. Michael may not know about my relationship with Becky. Even so, I couldn't believe this was a coincidence. I was certain that Becky had planned this, to break off my engagement. But even knowing that, there's nothing I can do now. If Michael has fallen in love with Becky, no matter how much I try to convince him otherwise, it will just sound like I'm a sore loser. I should be angrier at having the person I promised to marry taken from me. Maybe I should be clinging more, saying I don't want to break up. But I couldn't do that. I felt that if I did, I would feel even more miserable. "I understand, it's okay now." I said just that in a small voice, and turned my back on them. Then I called my mom, and that brings us to now. After hearing everything, my mom paused a bit, and then in a kind voice said, "You must have been through a lot, cry all you want until you feel okay." "Yeah, thanks." I'm really glad to have my mom. It's going to be tough for a while, but I'll surely be able to think positively. That's when my mom shocked me with her words. But, it's a good thing. Even if you had married your fiancé, I don't think you would have been happy. That's what I believe. I was taken aback by the unexpected statement. What? What do you mean? Then my mom smiled softly and said, because he's a man who could easily discard a wonderful woman like you. Also, I don't think things will go well between those two. Happiness built on hurting others so ruthlessly is fragile. There's something else that's been on my mind. I don't have proof, so I can't say it now. But I'm sure you'll understand soon, Harper. Don't worry, you're going to be happy. I was really curious about what my mom wanted to say, but I don't have the energy to think deeply now, and strangely I could trust my mom's words. So that day, I didn't pursue it any further and decided to go back to my own house because I had work the next day. On my way home, I was absent-mindedly thinking about the past. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old. My dad had an affair and left us. My mom has raised me by herself ever since. And the woman he had an affair with was Becky's mother. I have no intention of denying Becky's existence. But considering Becky is 2 years younger than me, it's easy to see how despicable my father's actions were. As an adult, I feel this more deeply. Even so, my father, as he is, seemed to care a bit about me, his daughter. He always sent me a gift for my birthday, and would take me out for meals a few times a year. When I was young and didn't even understand the meaning of the word affair, I purely loved my father who would come to see me. And my mom never said anything against that. I first met Becky when I was in the 3rd grade. Normally, I would dine with my dad, just the two of us, but this was the first time he brought along Becky. I was still a child back then, so I didn't care who Becky was or anything about her. I was just thrilled to be able to play with a girl slightly younger than me. Of course, Becky was just a kid at that time too. Regardless of our respective statuses and relationships, I remember playing well together. Looking back now, I wonder what was going on in my dad's head to make us meet. During elementary school, days passed where I would occasionally meet my dad and Becky, and we would eat together. But as I entered middle school and became busier with club activities and tutoring, naturally the times I saw my dad decreased. By the time I was in the 8th grade, even the messages from my dad ceased. By then, I knew without needing the specifics that my parents had divorced and my dad had a new family. Understanding that fact, I didn't think about contacting him. I can't say that I didn't feel lonely, but I thought that my mom must have been feeling this way even before me. But one day, when I was in the 9th grade, Becky enrolled in our school as a new student. I had no idea where she lived, so I never thought she'd end up at the same middle school. When I saw her, it felt like I was reuniting with an old friend, so I called out to her. "Becky, long time no see." Since elementary school, Becky had always been the girl with soft, white hair, big eyes, and long eyelashes. She was the epitome of the kind of beautiful girl that other girls admired, but in middle school, she had become even more stunning. Indeed, she was so noticeable among the new students that she became a hot topic in my grade. When I called out to her, Becky stared at me with her large eyes and said, "Who are you?" I could tell it was her right away, but had she forgotten me? Considering how young she was when we used to play together, it was understandable. Given the complicated nature of our relationship, I hesitated to explain. Although I was disappointed that we couldn't have a proper conversation, I opened my mouth, deciding to pretend it was a case of mistaken identity. Then, Becky said, "Oh, you're the poor girl who got dumped by my dad." Huh? Even Becky's friends who were with her were taken aback and asked her to repeat. Apparently, my dad was deceived by a terrible woman when he was young. He couldn't bear it, divorced her, and then married my mom. Do you need something? You're scaring me. With that, Becky started to act afraid of me. What? What do you mean, terrible woman? Your dad is the terrible one, isn't he? I couldn't help but retort. But this was just so typical of Becky. No matter how much I tried to explain myself, the atmosphere had entirely shifted in Becky's favor. You're a scary senior. If you continue to bully Becky, we'll report you to the student guidance counselor. That's what one of Becky's friends told me. No, I didn't mean it like that. Regardless of what I said, I was not believed and ended up being gossiped about in school as the senior who bullied the cute junior out of jealousy. We used to play together so well when we were kids. I couldn't fathom why Becky acted the way she did, and it broke my heart. I was even dumped by my boyfriend, who accused me of bullying a junior, something he said he hadn't expected from me. To add insult to injury, a few months later, he was dating Becky. This happened twice. I understand that in a small middle school community, it's not unheard of to date the same person. But for it to happen twice? That was beyond mere coincidence. I tried confronting Becky about it, but it only backfired with further accusations of me being a bully. Moreover, these false rumors about me never cleared up until graduation. I finally gave up on understanding Becky and chose to attend a high school where no one from my middle school was enrolled. No one knew about the rumors, and there was no Becky, so I wasn't worried about any further gossip. I was at peace with my high school life, but in the spring of my junior year, I was in for the worst surprise. Becky had enrolled in the same high school. And she was also a manager of the soccer club, just like me. As soon as Becky saw me, she said, "Oh, Harper is here too, nice to see you." This time, she was acting like a sweet junior. This is the same girl who gave me a hard time back in middle school. I just couldn't keep up with her dramatic transformation, and I didn't even feel like building a good relationship as senior and junior. I had no intention of being mean, but I was scared because I had no idea what Becky was planning behind her smiles. My bad hunch proved right. "Harper, why are you so cold to me? Did I do something wrong? I'm upset." Becky accused me of this while crying in front of the whole soccer team. What? I didn't think I had been that harsh, and if anyone had been mean, it was always her towards me. Becky was playing the victim and trying to demean me. She did it again. I thought to myself, but it was too late. All the team members adored Becky, who was cute, cheerful, and considerate. I thought I had established a good relationship of trust as a manager, but in this situation, no matter how much I struggled, I was the bad guy. I ended up being warned by the school administration for bullying my junior, and my position in the soccer team also suffered. I was perfectly labeled as a mean senior who bullied her junior. Back then, I had a crush on the soccer team captain of my grade. I had been quietly nurturing this feeling for over 2 years, and although it may sound presumptuous, I think we had been getting along well, going out on our days off and such. But with this rumor spreading, I was obviously kept at a distance. And when summer vacation ended, he was dating Becky, and I thought it was a nightmare. Why is Becky so against me? I have nothing to say if all of this is said to be a coincidence. But have I done something to Becky that she has to bother me even at school club activities? If the one who took away my father was resentful, I would understand, but Becky has both parents and should be living happily. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't understand Becky's thoughts. I ended my high school life in the worst possible way and decided to study abroad in hopes of escaping Becky's pursuit. Becky didn't follow me that far. Even after finishing my study abroad and living in Japan, Becky didn't show up for a while. After graduating from high school, I didn't know what Becky was doing or where she was. I was trying to forget the nightmares of my student days and the source of them, Becky, and was trying to get married and be happy. I didn't expect to be messed with by Becky again here. Is it a twist of fate, or is Becky planning something again? I don't know, but I definitely don't want to live my life in fear of Becky. I was sure of that. From then on, I took on more work than usual to avoid unnecessary thoughts. Unlike love, the more you work, the more results you get. I was recognized by my boss for my good work, and these successful experiences gradually healed my heart. My mom was right. As long as I don't give up, I can live positively. Just when I thought so, a few months after the breakup with Michael, when I finished my work and arrived at the station to go home, I saw a surprising sight. Becky? I saw Becky standing in front of a sculpture near the station. She seemed to be waiting for someone. I wondered if she might be meeting up with Michael. Regardless, I absolutely could not let myself bump into Becky. Although I don't currently have a boyfriend or anyone I'm fond of, you never know what else she might take from me. Making sure she didn't notice me, I swiftly made my way to the ticket gates. But then, I heard a voice exclaim, "Found you. I was looking for you." And the next thing I knew, my arm was firmly grasped. I could see anger in her eyes, but I couldn't understand why I should be the one she's mad at. Rather, I'm the one who should be mad. "What do you want?" "I don't have anything to talk about," I told her, shaking off Becky's hand. But she grabbed my wrist again, forcefully, and dragged me to the side of the ticket gate. Just how selfish and pushy can this woman be? With a feeling somewhere between shock and exasperation, I quietly followed her. When we finally reached a less crowded spot, Becky angrily spat out, "What's the meaning of all this? You've been deceiving me, haven't you?" "What are you talking about?" I retorted instantly, as I had no clue what she was talking about. "Don't play dumb with me, it's about Michael, obviously." "Huh. I'm the one who was hurt the most when it comes to Michael. There's no reason for her to yell at me." And then, Becky uttered words I couldn't believe. "Michael took $20,000 from me. You must have conspired with him, didn't you?" "What? What are you talking about?" Seeing my genuine surprise, Becky sank to the ground, out of energy. "So you're saying you didn't know? Michael said he needed $20,000 for his sick mom's operation, so I lent him the money. But the day after I gave him the money, I couldn't get in touch with him. His house was empty. I thought you used Michael to get back at me for taking all the men away from you, but is that really not the case?" If what she said is true, did Michael commit marriage fraud? I can't believe the person I was engaged to turned out to be a fraud. The thought of it sends chills down my spine. I really didn't know. Sure, Michael said the same thing to me, but I didn't have that kind of savings, and I said I couldn't ask my mom for it either, so he immediately broke off our engagement. I don't know how you two met, but perhaps when he realized he couldn't get money from me, he switched his target to you. I was surprised at myself for being able to talk about Michael, who I was heartbroken over, as if it was someone else's business. But Becky, of course, wasn't in a place to think about that. "I was irritated when I saw you coming out of a jewelry store, looking happy with a guy. That's why I stole him to get back at you, but I never thought it would turn out like this." I finally heard Becky's true feelings. As I suspected, she had intentionally stolen my boyfriends, the men I loved, and even my fiancé. I said to Becky, exasperated, "You're beautiful and have a bright, captivating charm. But because you've only wished for my misfortune and acted thoughtlessly, haven't you brought this unnecessary disaster upon yourself? If you hadn't interfered this time, I might have been the one hurt. You've made your own life difficult." Then Becky cut off my words, yelling in anger, "Shut up! Don't you dare lecture me! If it weren't for you, Dad would have been all mine. That's what I didn't like. Mom and Dad were always fighting over child support for you, and every time Dad visited you, Mom cried. I hated you." This was the first time I heard Becky's true feelings. I, who was left alone with my mother, did feel the absence of my father from time to time, but I never had to witness their fights or experience any heart-wrenching feelings. Of course, I think my mom felt sad in ways I couldn't see. But I was raised happy as her daughter. On the other hand, Becky, who appeared to have a happy family with both parents, was dealing with struggles unknown to others. That's not to say I think it's okay for her to harass me, not at all. Hearing Becky's true feelings for the first time, a part of me couldn't help but feel sympathy. "I've lent out all my savings and even gotten into debt. I quit my job to get married, what am I supposed to do now?" Becky lamented. It's her own fault she got caught up in this marriage fraud while trying to harass me. Honestly, I can't help but think she brought this upon herself. But after hearing what she just said, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. "I can't help you with money. But I can at least help you find a job," I offered. "Huh?" She probably didn't expect me to throw her a lifeline. She looked at me in surprise. Someone at my company just left their receptionist job. They're looking for a replacement. Of course, I won't forgive you if you try to harass me again. But if you've learned your lesson, I'll help as much as I can. Even I thought I was being too lenient. But we are sisters after all. Seeing Becky so broken and crying, I couldn't just ignore her. I am sorry. I'm really sorry. Becky cried, sobbing uncontrollably. She must have been overwhelmed with regret for everything. From then on, Becky really did start working as a receptionist at my company. Even after all that harassment, and despite thinking I never wanted to have anything to do with her again. I can't believe I was stupid enough to invite her to work at the company where I work. As expected, Becky became popular in the company due to her vibrant appearance and innate brightness. But she's finally learned her lesson and doesn't harass me anymore. She looks a little embarrassed whenever I pass by, but she doesn't spread nasty rumors or speak in a fake voice. Honestly, I'm relieved. By the way, it seems that my mom once overheard a suspicious phone call from Michael when we were engaged. But she didn't have any evidence, so she was debating on what to say to me when the engagement was broken off. While the situation isn't what we imagined, in the end, my mom, Becky, and I are living our lives positively in unexpected ways. Whatever hardships may come in the future, I'll remember my mom's words. No matter what, I'll be happy. I'll be fine. I'll chant in my heart. Upon checking my phone, I saw that I had 13 missed calls. They were all from my mother-in-law, Martha. Not again. As I was pondering this, my phone vibrated once more. Hello? Upon answering the call, Martha raised her voice in anger. Excuse me. Isn't the allowance for this month $3,000 due? Excuse me? I said, send the allowance. This month's payment hasn't been deposited yet. Martha raged, completely disregarding my circumstances and only expressing her own desires. I'd had enough of her. Even in this situation, she doesn't reflect on her words and actions, does she? I've got no choice but to resort to my last option. I pulled myself together and blurted out to my phone. Your son has passed away, so I can no longer send allowance. My name is Jennifer Smith, 32 years old. I'm a busy working woman at a major financial firm and also a housewife. I got married about 2 years ago. I met my beloved husband, Mark, through our shared hobbies. He was kind to everyone, and I was attracted to his warm smile, quickly developing feelings for him. Apparently, he felt the same way, and after dating for a year, we immediately got engaged. We both believed that we wouldn't meet anyone better than each other. We were living together while dating, and without any major quarrels, we decided to marry. Everything went smoothly for us, but here's where a problem arose. That was Martha, my mother-in-law. My father-in-law had passed away a few years ago, and since Mark didn't have any siblings, his only family was Martha. The trouble started when I first visited her home to introduce myself before our wedding. Nice to meet you. Martha clearly showed a displeased expression. So you're Mark's fiancé? Yes. My name is Jennifer Miller. You're a rather plain girl. I wonder what Mark sees in you. Huh? I couldn't tell if she was joking or seriously meant what she said. Having such words directed at me by the mother of my loved one, I was quite shocked. Seeing my state, Mark frowned at Martha. Hey, Mom. What's with the sudden harsh words? How can you say such things to the person I chose? No, Mark. I'm just trying to choose a suitable woman for you. Choose? I'm the one who chose her. You have no right to meddle. Don't say it in such a cold way. I'm just telling the truth because I care about you. If you were really thinking of me, you'd simply support us. Why can't you understand such a simple thing? The air turned heavy as an argument unfolded between mother and son right before my eyes. Given that this was my first meeting with Martha, I wasn't in a position to intervene. Although the atmosphere remained awkward, we ultimately managed to express our intent to marry. As we were leaving, Martha called out to Mark, sounding somewhat disgruntled. Mark, can I have a word? You're going to keep that promise after you get married, right? What promise? You know, about the allowance. That. Yes, I'll be sure to take care of that. Can we not discuss it here, please? Well, I was just asking. Throughout, the atmosphere between my husband and his mother was tense, and the air was thick with discomfort. In the car on the way home, I asked Mark about the thing that had been bothering me. "Hey, Mark. About the conversation you had with your mom as we were leaving." "Yeah, I should have told you about it, Jennifer. I heard something about an allowance. After my dad passed away, I've been sending money to my mom every month." "How much?" $2,000. "What? $2,000? I couldn't help but raise my voice in surprise. He then sighed deeply and began to speak slowly. "Actually, my mom has a debt." "A debt?" "She lost a lot of money at a casino a long time ago. She's still paying it off, and because her health isn't great these days, she spends a lot of time at home. But she still needs money to live on, right?" "But $2,000, isn't that a bit too much?" "If I try to lower the amount, she keeps calling me over and over. And no matter what, a mother is still a mother. I worry about her living alone." "I see. Mark is really devoted to his mother. But of course, that makes sense. Since his father passed away, Martha has been the only family he has left. Regardless of her character, she's still his beloved mother. At that time, I only thought of my husband as a kind person. 2 months after our wedding, during my lunch break one day, I received a phone call on my smartphone. The call was from Martha. When I answered with a hello, Martha began to speak in a cheerful tone. "Jennifer? Long time no see. Can we chat for a bit?" "Yes. What can I do for you?" "Well, I was hoping you could start sending me money." "Excuse me?" I was so taken aback she couldn't find the words to respond. However, Martha seemed excited to continue the conversation. "You mentioned before that you're working for a financial company, right? That means you have a good salary, doesn't it?" "Well, not exactly." "What? You're lying to avoid giving me money?" "That's not what I mean." "Then what is it?" "But Martha, you're still receiving financial support from Mark, aren't you?" To my question, Martha responded in defiance, "So what?" Jennifer sternly stated what she felt Martha was not appreciating. "Martha, receiving $2,000 monthly support is a big deal. And yet, you're asking for more." Really? You think so? If you were to send me an additional $1,000, I could avoid burdening Mark." "What do you mean by that?" "Well, I have Mark as a guarantor for my debts. If I fail to make payments, the debt collectors will go after him. Do you understand? But aren't you using part of Mark's $2,000 to pay back the debt?" "I'm short. I haven't told Mark, but I have a significant amount of debt." From Martha's tone, it was apparent that this was a fact even her husband was unaware of. Having children in the future would increase our expenses. In addition to that, taking over Martha's debt was not an easy task. But if Martha's payments fall behind, and the debt falls onto Mark, the interest will likely have accumulated significantly by that time. If I refused to send money, it would eventually become a problem for my husband as well. It was better for Martha to pay off her debt now. Thinking along those lines, I reluctantly agreed to Martha's proposal. "All right. I'll start sending you money." "Really? Good God, Jennifer. I knew you would say that." "The total with Mark's contribution will be $3,000, but this means you can pay off your debt, right?" "Yes, of course. I should be able to pay it all off in about a year." "You promise, right? You'll make sure to pay off all your debts?" "I get it. So, I'll be expecting it from this month onwards." Martha ended the call abruptly. Physical exhaustion from work combined with this emotional burden only added to my stress. $1,000 a month, that's gonna be rough. But it's also to prevent future problems for us. After all, if Martha can't make a living, it will upset Mark as well. That night, I promptly reported the matter to my husband. He told me I didn't have to do this, but I had already given my word to Martha, and it was a decision made for our future well-being. Mark expressed his gratitude and understanding, even as he maintained a sorry expression throughout. Time flew by, and 2 years have passed since then. The financial aid we thought would end in a year is still ongoing, and even now, we are transferring $3,000 every month to Martha. What's more, about 2 months ago, Mark fell ill and has been unable to go to work. He's on sick leave, so he's receiving disability benefits, but it's a mere pittance compared to his previous salary. Last month, I managed to transfer $3,000 to Martha from my savings, but it would be very challenging if this situation continues. And unbelievably, Martha has not once come to visit her sick son. We have told her his hospitalization, but she doesn't show up to see him, and only contacts me to ask you're still sending the money, right? I was so angry that I decided to confront Mark about the issue. Mark, listen. Don't you think it's wrong that Martha is only concerned about money, even though you're in such a state? We need to think seriously about what to do going forward. Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing. I don't want to put more strain on you, Jennifer. This month, too, she's been bombarding me with calls and messages, asking if we've sent the money yet. Are you serious? How can she only think about money when her own son is sick? Mark showed his anger at his mother, his face slightly worn. Then, as if he had an idea, Mark exclaimed, "That's it," and wore a sly grin. What is it, Mark? Well, this is our last resort. I've come up with something. Something good? Yeah, for my mom. What? What Mark suggested was a plan I could never have imagined. Although it could be called inappropriate, that seemed to be the only way to make Martha understand. A few weeks later, Mark was discharged from the hospital. Martha didn't reply to any of our messages, so we didn't tell her about Mark's discharge. In the last 2 weeks, Martha has been relentlessly demanding the money. There's no point in sending money to a mother who doesn't even worry about her son. While Mark and I were enjoying a cup of tea, a message came in on my phone. Upon checking, I found 13 missed calls from Martha. Again. As I thought so, my phone vibrated again. It was another call from Martha. Hello. I turned on the speakerphone so that Mark could hear, and Martha started shouting right away. Listen. Where's the $3,000 for this month? Excuse me? That's right, the money. The money for this month hasn't been transferred yet. Martha, do you realize? Mark is now. I don't care if he's in the hospital or whatever. It's none of my business. You're working at a good place, right? You must have plenty of savings. Hurry up and transfer it here. Martha was shouting angrily. Eventually, she said something unbelievable. Listen. Since you married Mark, if he can't pay, you have to pay me, understand? If you refuse, I'll make you the guarantor, got it? At that moment, something inside me snapped. She was displaying her desires openly, without considering our situation at all. I had reached my breaking point with her. She didn't even try to reflect on her own actions. Now, I had no choice but to resort to the last resort. I firmly declared into my smartphone, Mark has passed away. I can't send you any more money. At these words, Martha blurted out a baffled what? Yes, this was the last resort that my husband suggested. Lie to Martha about Mark's death and observe her reaction. If she showed any sign of sadness, if she reflected on her behavior and apologized, we would continue to support her financially. But if she didn't reflect, if she demanded money, we would sever ties completely. Deep down, I thought that even a money-grubbing woman like Martha would deeply reflect on her actions if she were told that her own son had died. But the very next moment, Martha burst into loud laughter. Yay! What's so funny? Well, isn't it obvious? If Mark is dead, that means his inheritance will be distributed to me too. Excuse me? I've been looking into it since I heard that Mark was sick. Listen here, 2/3 of Mark's assets are yours, but 1/3 is mine. I was at a loss for words. I never thought that when she first heard that her son was sick, she wouldn't look into treatment, but into how the inheritance would be divided. My anger surpassed, I was simply dumbfounded. My husband seemed to feel the same way, and as our eyes met, he slowly nodded. This was the signal to continue with the plan. I once again said to Martha in a strong tone, Martha, did you hear what I said? Mark is dead. I heard. What about it? Aren't you sad? Your own son passed away before you. You. Just make sure to send me some. I won't let you get away with not doing it. With a click, the phone line was cut off and a dial tone echoed. I glanced at my husband and saw that he was shaking, his face red with anger. Mark, are you okay? As I asked, my husband looked into my eyes and said, I'm cutting ties with her. She'll likely come here eventually, demanding money. Let's wait until then. Okay. But are you really okay with this? Cutting off ties just like that? Yeah. I have no regrets after that call. She's no mother. My husband's eyes were filled with hatred. And I felt the same way. A person who only thinks about money over her own son's life is not a family to me. A few days later, as we expected, Martha came to our house. For the time being, I decided to hide my husband in the next room and deal with Martha myself. Then Martha approached me with a face like a demon. "Hey, give me Mark's inheritance right now." "Again with that? Anything else to say? He's already dead, isn't he? It's pointless to say anything now. Yet, you never even visited him. What are you saying? Are you really his mother? You're so annoying. Give me the inheritance right away. I don't mind getting a lawyer." Speaking more would be a waste of time. Just as I thought that, my husband emerged from the next room. Seeing him, Martha let out a startled gasp as if she had seen a ghost. Mark! Why? Weren't you dead?" "Long time no see, Mom. Sorry, but the news about my death was a lie." "Lie? How could you be so disrespectful?" "I wanted to confirm your true nature, Mom. I was curious about how you'd handle the allowance if I, your son, died. But you turned out to be a gold digger, just as I suspected. I got that perfectly." "What? How dare you call your mother a gold digger?" "Silence. I'm cutting ties with a toxic parent like you." Martha's mouth was agape at my husband's angry shouts. She could not come to terms with the fact that her own son was severing ties with her. What does this mean, Mark?" "It means exactly what I said. I can't consider someone like you as my mother." "No way! Then, what about the allowance?" "Do you really think I would? You're on your own with the debts. We're moving." "Wait, please! If you do that, what about my living expenses?" Tearfully pleading, Martha reached out to my husband. He forcefully shook off her hand, looked at her coldly and said, "I don't care about your living expenses. You have been living off us without even a single apology. I really understand your despicable nature now. Don't you dare show up in front of us again." "No. Wait, Mark. Are you going to abandon your mother?" Ignoring her words, my husband grabbed Martha's arm and dragged her to the front door. He threw her shoes and bag outside and chased Martha out of the house. Martha was making a fuss outside for a while, but disappeared after a bit, perhaps unable to withstand the eyes of the neighbors. She tried contacting us multiple times, but we ignored all of her attempts. We set Martha's number to be automatically rejected, and we finished moving. Regarding the matter of co-signing for the debts, it became invalid since Martha had made Mark the co-signer without his consent, and therefore he was not responsible. Without the allowance from us, Martha seems to be leading a miserable life. It's only natural, as she had been using the allowance for her gambling habits instead of paying off her debts. She still has a mountain of debts, and she is chased by debt collectors every day. She can't gamble anymore and seems to be working from dawn to dusk. For the foreseeable future, it's unlikely that she will be able to pay off her debts completely. She will have to keep working until she is unable to move. This is entirely her own doing. As for us, we are spending fulfilling days in our new home. My husband's condition has stabilized, and he has returned to work after some time. Now, there's a new life growing in my belly. We're going to have an additional member in our family next year. From now on, we want to spend happy days as a family of 3.